again and welcome to the next Make It Monday with Tina. We're going to do some sewing today using our stamps, and you'll be able to watch these on our social media and our different Facebook pages and whatever you want to do, YouTube channel. Right, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you a couple of things that I've done before so that you can see where I'm going, and then I'll show you how I'm using my stamps. Okay, so let's pop this to one side. And I'm going to bring in here. So when I do a piece of sewing, I like to just put it into my fabric journal here. So I've used lots of different things to cover this. You'll probably recognise quite a few of these from all the different shows that we have on the craft store. This was actually crocheted by my nan. So I've added that in because I wanted to add some bits that was hers as well. So this is a stamp that I used, and it was an All and Create stamp. So that was one of the ones that I used, but I wanted to bring some in there where I've actually got the stamp here for you as well. So if we look at this one, we have this lady here, and she's got all cogs and gears in her hair, but all I wanted is I wanted just the shape of the lady so that I can use my fabric and my stamp and my threads to just colour in how I wanted to colour her in. So that's how she is on the back there, and that's the stamp I used. I then have used some Pretty Gets Gritty stamps. So again, we have the lion. I've used some variegated threads on the flowers on this one, and then there's one of the Gina G's buttons there, which I love doing. I think it's a Dorset button, that one. And then over here I've used this stamp, again from Pretty Gets Gritty. Love elephants, so that was really great to use that. And that is a Lorna Bateman button that time. So another All and Create one. Some other ones that I've just sewn. And then this is another one where I've used these different elements because I love the shapes of these stamps, and I thought they would be great. So you could fill in the parts, or you can just do a little bit of crawl work going on there. Okay, so let's pop that to one side and I'll show you how I use them. Okay, so I've got my material, got my stamp pad and ink. Now I'm using a VersaFine and I'm going to use that on the material. If you want to, you can use a one Pacific leaf for your fabric. I tend to use whatever ink pad I want, and then I use my heat tool to heat seal it. Okay, so I'm just going to take myself a piece of fabric. Now this is going to be the size hoop that I'm going to use, so I want to make sure that I have enough fabric area for my hoop so that I'm not struggling. So I'll probably go over the amount that I actually need. So cut myself a section. And this is a cotton fabric. You can use cotton, you can use linen, whichever you like. Just give it a go. I am one for just like, give it a go, see if it works. Okay, pop that to one side. So then, leaving my fabric here, I'm going to take my stamp. Okay. And this is a Studio Light one. And I'm going to use this main flower here. Pop that onto my stamp block. If you don't have a stamp block, just stamp it. It's not that, it's not really that too worrying. You can. What I like about doing this is I'm just going to pop on my ink. But what I like about this is that if I do miss a bit, it doesn't matter, because what I'm going to do is I'm just going to paint my fabric with my thread. So therefore, it really doesn't matter if I miss part, because I'm going over with thread anyway. So I'm just going to rest that on there, and I'm going to give it a little bit of a squish. If you're worried, use a stamp press. You can use a stamp press underneath, or you can use a piece of foam underneath as well, and just let it soak in. So you get a really, really lovely impression. So I would have my heat gun, and I would make sure that that was all lovely and dry. But what I'm going to do at this point is just run a little bit of my towel over the top. So if you haven't got a heat gun either, you could pop some towel over and use your iron just to heat set it. You see, I'm not getting a lot of throwback mark on there anyway, but just so it doesn't discolour my thread. So let's get my hoop and pop in that into here, and then push in the outside on. So we get a really, really nice firmness there. And let's tighten that up and just pull that through. So keep making sure that your fabric's nice and tight. You can do this without a hoop if you prefer, and you can use the hoop stands as well, whatever's easiest for you. Okay, so I'm going to take my first piece of thread here, and I'm going to just do part of one of the leaves here for you. So with this one, I'm going to use chain stitch because it gives you quite a bulky stitch, and that's quite nice to go up these leaves here. Where I'll show you a different effect on these slimmer leaves that I would normally use if the leaves were a little bit wider, but I can still show you the technique. So I'm using a mixture of threads. I've got this one which is a single thread, and I'm using these ones which are the 6-stranded. So you can use whatever you want, and when you have the 6-stranded threads, you can decide how many strands you want to use. So you could use the 6 strands, or if you just wanted to use 1 or 2, in this case I'm using 2, then you just separate your threads, hold them between your fingers, and then just pull through. And then just do that for each of your threads, or take one bigger piece and double it up to have your 2 threads. Now that is probably the length that you would need, because otherwise you do get a little bit knotty in your threads. And the friction as well, depending on what you use, what thread you use, the friction of going through the fabric can make them get a little bit fluffy. Okay, so I'm going to start off here at the base of this leaf that's going up here, and as I say, I've got 2 strands of thread going on. Let's pull that through. Then just keep my strands together. I'm going to go back through that hole there, and then I'm going to come up through here. Now you can use whatever threads and whatever stitch you want to use, because this is your piece, you know, so make it your own. So you've got that little loop there, and then what I do is hold that over, go back through, and then go over as well. If it moves, then just tuck the thread underneath and then pull through, and then make sure both of your threads are pulled through together, and then you can carry on doing that. So just through again, over here, tuck both of my threads on there. That's a longer stitch this time, so if you want to do longer chain, you can. So see the effect that you get. When you get to the end, you would just pop your thread through, and then you can tie off your thread at the back like that, just through a couple of stitches, and then snip off. So if we go to this one here, I'll show you how to do the leaf stitch. Now this is one of my favourite stitches, the leaf stitch, because I think it gives such a lovely look on the front and also on the back. So if you're doing something where you're going to need to see both sides and then need to be both neat, then this is an ideal stitch. Okay, so taking our needle, I've popped it through the fabric. I'm then going to pop it as if I'm going down the middle of the stem and then up at one side. So I have a line first of all. I then go to the bottom of that stitch as close as I can get, and then up through the other side, and then the bottom of that stitch and up through the other side, and then the bottom of that stitch, and I'm gradually moving down the stem. And I love this stitch because I think it's just so neat. And if you're using a variegated thread as well, then you're going to get all of your highlighting and everything done in one go, and all of your shading, because you've got different colours. Now I just want to show you, I'm using a pink thread here, a pink cotton base here, but you can see that the threads have got no problem covering over. And I'm going right to the edge of my stamped image as well, so I'm not getting the black edge of the stamp. There, I went just too far down, so I can just fill that in by popping another stitch there. Just like that. So direct your stitches to where you want them to be. Okay, just going to go a little bit further so that I can show you the back. Again, you could do straight stitch, you could do satin stitch, entirely up to you. There. So we've got a really lovely effect of a leaf there. And if I turn over, it's just as nice on the back as well. So as I say, if you're doing double-sided, then it's going to be fabulous. So let's pull that through. And cast off at the back. Like that. Okay, so let's grab one of our pinks. Now, you can make the flower whatever you want to make it. So, you know, I'm going to just use pinks on this. I think it's one that is normally in purples or blue, so it really doesn't matter. But what we do is on this one, we can just add some French knots. So I'm coming up through the back. I've got a knot on my thread. This time I'm using 2 strands of my 6-stranded thread. I'm going to wrap once, twice around my needle, pop it through next to it, and then just let the fabric flow, and the cotton flow through the fabric there, and then I've got a little knot. If you want bigger knots, then use more strands of threads. So I'm just going to build up just a few knots here together. So once, twice around. You can go once around if you want to, if you want even smaller little flowers. This really does add a lot of interest when you're using your French knots. Lots and lots of interest. And these little flowers here, you'll find that they actually fill up quite quickly when you're using a thicker thread and using French knots. So if you're doing these and you want to pop them onto a card for somebody so they've got something to keep afterwards, it's really, really nice to do that. Okay, so there, just like that. So you can carry on doing as many French knots as you want. And the reason I'm leaving gaps is because I can use different colours of my pinks, different shades of my pinks to go in between as well, to create some different shades. So popping that over, I'm just going to pop that through here to fasten off. Oops. Like that. And pop the thread off. Okay, so I'm going in for my other pink now. So what I'll do is I'll do one French knot this side, just so that you can see what I mean about the different shading and grouping things together of slightly different colours to give you a depth in your piece. So you can imagine how many stamps that you've got at home that you can reuse with, you know, your fabrics. And I know people are absolutely loving embroidery at the moment. I'm just completely hooked. So I do embroidery every evening, and I absolutely love it. And I've been able to get out some of the stamps I haven't used for a little while because I'm using them in a different way. So that's just adding, as you can see, different colours of your pinks there to add shading and highlights. Now with this one, I'm going to do a little loopy stitch. So I'm going to go up through here, and then I'm going to hold my thread a little bit like the chain stitch, go in real quite close next to it, pop up through the end where I want my loopy stitch to end, pull that just gently, and then fasten that the other side of the cotton. There, just like that. So now we've got some loopy stitches going on, which gives also another look to your stamp here. Now you don't have to do this. You could do different stitches you could print this, like, you know, stamp it about, I don't know, 5 times and then use different stitches on the flowers, and all of your things will look different because of the stitches that you've used and the colours that you've used. And if you want to, like me, I'm not even worrying if there was like one of these little circles here. I'm thinking I want a little loopy stitch there, so I'm popping it in, and no one's going to see what I've printed on the back. So here we are with another one, and let's do this loopy stitch over here, just like that. Now what I like about this as well is what you can do is with your stamps, don't shy away from using your word stamps as well, because you can just embroider using your word stamps. So if I imagine there was a line going down here, I'll just do a T. Then all I have to do is I can do a stitch where it's just a straight stitch that I'm just tucking in behind that one and making my line for the T. So it's nice if you've done something as well to pop your initials on it, and then just up in between the 2 places that I'd been, and then carry on down like that. Or you could go across. I'm just a little bit too far out with that one, but we won't worry about that. And then this one you could do a piercing stitch which goes across like this, and then I'm going to come up here, and then I'm going to pierce through the actual thread, and then that is even straighter. And that one, what you can do is you can use that one, oops, because it's quite nice and straight, just like this, and pierce through there. And then if you want it even straighter, then you can come up through here, and then you can use what we call a whip stitch and just go underneath like that, so that pulls it even straighter, and then underneath. Now you could go underneath with a different thread if you wanted to, so that would pop out even more, but just underneath the thread, and then tuck it down, and that brings your stitches even closer together. You can guide those as well. What I like about these stitches, you can guide them round your curvy letters. Okay, so there we go. So I hope that's given you some ideas of using your stamps and using your different stitches just to make use of your stamps in a completely different way. You could add these onto pieces that you've done before. You could make a little book of them. You could add them to cards. You could actually do, you know, whatever you want to, or to your mixed media as well, like we did last week. So that is what I've got for you today, and I hope to see you again next Monday, and take care.